Scott, thank you so much for joining me today at 3M to talk about the State of Science Index. As you know, this is a global study we conducted to understand the general population's attitudes and perceptions towards science. And I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts about that.
Oh, my pleasure, Jayshree. Thank you. I think the thing that was most shocking for me is that 38 or 40% of the people that were surveyed, at least, think if science didn't exist, their lives would be no different. I think for the majority of people on this planet, science is, why we have everything we have today.
Yeah, I mean, the statistic that you pointed out, the fact that 4 out of 10 said that if science didn't exist, their lives wouldn't be any different, it is indeed shocking. So it leads me to the question, is how do we make people aware of the importance of science in everyday life?
Well, it's a challenge, and I think it really starts with kids. Now with technology and the internet, a lot of kids have access to many, many more choices. Mm-hmm. So trying to leverage that, technology in a way to, educate and inspire, I think, is the challenge.
Students like my daughter, they like science, but they say it's just too hard in school. Mm-hmm. So how did you go from being an apathetic student to somebody who embraced science, so much so that you ended up spending a year in space in the name of science? Mm-hmm.
Well, I was this kid that could not pay attention. I didn't do my homework. It's not because I didn't want to. Every year I started out, okay, this year's going to be different. I'm going to get straight A's, and then, day 3, I'm back to my old habits, not doing well. And for me, what it required was inspiration. And that inspiration came from a book, The Right Stuff, that was about the early days of the space program. And just reading those stories, I said, I want to do that. But to do that, I have to become a good science and math student and an engineer. And if it wasn't for that inspiration, it was absolutely impossible for me to pay attention.
So you're basically saying once you had the inspiration, you didn't really care what you had to do to get there. But if you talk at the other end of the spectrum, there's like 27% of the adults who said that they did not see any reason why they should have to understand science as an adult. Why do you think it matters that adults who may not be in the scientific field still need to understand some rudimentary concepts of science and appreciate science?
Well, for one, those adults are the people that decide who represents them in government. Mm-hmm. And the people in government make the laws that have a very significant impact on our lives and our futures.
Well, let's talk about other demographics. So one of the questions we asked is, what do you think science will achieve in your lifetime? And 46% of the millennials said that we'd be living on Mars. What do you think about that?
If you consider, how in 1903, the Wright brothers flew, powered flight for the first time, and 66 years later, we're flying in space, having people walk on the moon. You couldn't really write that science fiction story and it be believable. Mm-hmm. So I've talked to my younger daughter about this, that she could possibly live into the next century, and the Earth that we have today is, I don't think, going to resemble the Earth that we have 100 years from now. Mm-hmm. And if you consider history and what history has looked like, and I think it's whatever we make of it.
It's interesting food for thought. So one question I have to ask, and you probably get this a lot, what was your favorite part of being in space for a year?
Having the privilege of being able to spend a year on the space station and just really flying in space in general. It's technically challenging. It's work that is meaningful, that has significant consequences if you don't do it right. Mm-hmm. And then the people. The people that you get to do it with. So it's really, the meaningfulness of the work and the human relationships that go along with it.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Scott, again for coming to 3M. We appreciate your support in helping us celebrate science.
Great to be here, Jayshree. Thank you.